Welcome to the SWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. And we're here with guest mentor, Angela Chung, who's going to share her journey in becoming a speech language pathologist. So that's definitely not one of those things that people think of in terms of like a doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, but it's one that it's very important in terms of helping folks in terms of confidence and things like that. And we got connected, and we'd love to walk through starting a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we'll get into what you were like as a kid and kind of go through the journey to get to where you are now. So why don't you start off with what you're up to now, Angela?
So right now, I have my own business that I started with my partner, Michael, called Speak Fluent. And what our target audience is basically working professionals who want to improve their communication, but they don't really know what services are available. A lot of working professionals, they feel like they're kind of stuck with the way they're speaking right now. So what we provide are like accent modification services, because we want people to know that it is possible to modify your accent after a certain age, and also know that there are different ways you can improve your communication as well, using your intonation in a different way. If you think about how people during TED Talks they talk in a very specific, dynamic, and engaging way. And we want to be able to share this information and train working professionals to be able to talk and engage people in this way. So that's our primary focus with Speak Fluent. But speech language pathologists can work with a variety of people from all age groups. So children are, I guess, the most common population that speech language pathologists work with. I'm going to abbreviate speech language pathologist to SLP from now on, just because it's easier to say.
Yep.
So I actually also work kind of in the schools. So I work as a contractor in the schools, and basically I go in and I assess and I treat children who have speech sound disorders. So if you think of a child who has difficulty saying R, which is the most common, that's basically what a speech sound disorder is, if like it's typical for their age group. So there are a lot of considerations that we have to have. And I also work with stuttering and voice disorders. So there's just a lot of things that go into our communication, the sounds that we make, how we structure our sentences, how we use our voice in a dynamic, engaging way. If we sound hoarse like this, then it's just a lot to work with, and I work with all of that. So that's basically what I'm doing now. And I'm trying to put more of my focus on Speak Fluent, because I feel like this is an area that people haven't really explored. And there are so many working professionals. And if you're not working, if you're a student, or if you're just looking for a job, this is a fantastic service that a lot of people don't know about. You can improve your communication to prepare yourself for interviews. You can prepare your communication so you can like speak with people from different parts of the world in a way that they can understand. Not everyone is privileged to to live in a such diverse community like I do in Toronto. So there are people who aren't as used to different accents. And for those people, it'll be more difficult for them to understand different accents. And yeah, everyone just has a different experience, and everyone has different, I guess, perceptions of accent and a different ability to understand different accents. And I just want to make sure that this service is available to a lot of different people.
That's amazing. It's definitely an important one to have, and hopefully there's going to be lots of success, because I think there's a lot of people that need it. But if we can take a step back and kind of talk about yourself as a kid, right? Growing up, because speech language pathology is probably not on the top of anybody's radar, and then figuring out how you find that, and it sounds like that you actually enjoy and you kind of love what you're doing. So how does that happen? So were you born in the area? Where did you grow up? And maybe some of the influences in your life as well.
So I've had a lot of mostly my family influenced my decision to go into SLP. I actually was born in Taiwan, and I moved to BC, Canada, when I was 5. And so my siblings, my younger brother and my older sister, came here. So my brother was like younger when he got here, and my sister was a bit older. So that kind of influences how you adopt an accent as well.
Are you middle child then?
I'm the middle child,
Okay,
yes. Yeah.
with me. So yeah.
Yeah. So what I found is that my accent isn't as strong, doesn't have as strong of a Chinese influence as my sister's does. And then my parents, of course, they have a like strong Mandarin accent. Um, and like accent wasn't the only thing that influenced me. As I grew up, my brother actually saw an SLP when as he was growing up, and my mom would sometimes tell me, "Oh, like help your brother practice." And I don't really remember too much of this, but I remember teaching him how to make the R sound, for example, and like I enjoy teaching, and I felt good about being able to teach my brother these sounds and like being good at English, I guess, as an immigrant. And I would like skip ESL levels to, so my mom really made me aware that I was good with like language, with English, with speaking. And I was just aware of this growing up. But I didn't really hear or about SLP until I was much older. I kind of forgot about the whole thing with my brother until I asked my mom about it later on.
Right.
So with Asian parents, I did get a lot of, hey, why don't you be a lawyer? Why don't you be a doctor?
Yeah.
Why don't you be my dad's like,
Engineer,
why
an
don't you be a
accountant. Yeah.
judge? Why don't you be a
Okay.
pharmacist? Right. I'm like, I don't really want to be any of those things. Now, at that time when I was grade 12, I was thinking about going into teaching because I enjoyed teaching people. I liked that mentoring piece, and I really value education. So I was
Right.
talking to my mom about it, and she said, teaching's not a great career right now. If you look at how many teachers are going on strike in BC right now, it's just not like the best future, possibly. And she had a friend whose daughter was an SLP as well. So
Okay.
she suggested it to me. So what I did was I just looked into it and I found it really, really interesting. And then from that point on, I started really reflecting on how communication skills make such a big impact on my life. Now, I hope my brother doesn't mind me mentioning this, but he did see an SLP, and it wasn't just for his sounds. It was also for like how he developed language. He didn't talk until he was much older, and when we first moved to Canada, I think my mom was really struggling being in Canada by herself for a little while, and she was trying to take care of three children. So she didn't get to spend a lot of time with the kids. And what SLPs need to do to train families is that you need to spend a lot of time talking to your kids to build up that language. Now, my brother didn't get a lot of that. He was very young when he moved. I was 5, so he was 1, which is like prime, like you're
Right.
supposed to get your first word. You're supposed
Yeah.
to start getting a lot of words at around that age, and he didn't get that. So what I found is that his language is just a little bit like weaker, like his language skills are a bit weaker than the rest of us. And I feel like that really impacted his kind of how he was portrayed to like other people. So my family, and it's really sad to say, my parents, um, a lot of people tie like your communication skills to like how smart you are.
Right.
So my parents kind of saw his weak language skills as reflective of his intelligence. So and then they treated him in that way. So in my family, um, a lot of the time we would like make jokes about him being dumb, which is
Right.
terrible, which is terrible. And sometimes I would be like, okay, but he's not actually dumb. You guys know that, right? Because he was definitely like he read a lot. His vocabulary was great actually. He got really good vocabulary. He had great spelling skills, but just the speaking part, that oral
Right.
communication part, he was a bit weaker and a bit more awkward. So that really affected how people treated him, especially within my family, which is the worst thing to say, but it definitely was worse in my family. And so when I decided to go into SLP and kind of wrote my like, why did I go into SLP? I truly feel communication is so important because humanity is all about building social relationships, right?
Right.
Everything, like you have to be, humans are social beings, and communication is a core part of how to build social relationships. And I feel like if you don't have good communication, then it can affect how people see you, and it can affect your relationships as well. So I just felt like it was so important. And that's why I wanted to get into it. So SLP is really something that I hold dear in my heart.
Yeah, that's amazing. My experience, well, I have very limited experience with SLP, but my nephew was kind of similar to your brother, where because my sister taught him sign language as a kid, right? So like more you put your hands together and stuff like that. But he reverted to that, and instead of learning to speak, he was using a sign language. So similar to your brother, he was speaking later, not because he was dumb or couldn't communicate or whatever. It's just like, well, if I can communicate a different way, why should I learn how to talk? So slightly different reason, but yeah, and then it helped him progress and grow and learn. So, and totally echo the sentiment about communication being so important, but some of it is speech and some of it is other ways. So folks have to learn to communicate together. So I'd love to
Exactly.
kind of work back to kind of growing up. So were you like a confident kid, like an outgoing kid? Like, and what are some of the characteristics that uh, can help you point out that, hey, SLP is something that you want to consider? So you mentioned things like you spoke well and stuff like that. And to me, like speaking well is generally you're more confident and outgoing, which is kind of why I asked the question.
I was
But
actually
are
not confident at
okay,
all as a kid, and I was not outgoing, and I'm still like a major introvert.
okay,
I was actually really, really shy as a kid. But as an introvert, I was okay working one-on-one, which and
sure,
I liked like building a relationship with people, and I guess that's why I thought I could like teaching. But as a kid, I was not confident at all, actually. And part of the reason why I didn't want to become that pharmacist, doctor, lawyer was because I thought I couldn't do it.
Mm,
Even though my grades were good in school, I was a great student. Like if you
okay,
think about the perfect obedient student that just does her homework, attends every class, then that's me.
okay,
But I had really poor self-confidence. I didn't think that I could do anything. One of the reasons why I didn't learn any instrument was because I thought I couldn't do it.
oh, okay,
So like my self-esteem was pretty terrible as a kid. Um, and I didn't like talking to people whenever my parents tried to get me to like, get me to contact the cell phone provider, service provider. I
sure,
wouldn't want to do it whenever they wanted me to ask someone a question, like what time it is or like what the directions were. I wouldn't want to do it. I just didn't want to talk to anybody because I was just so shy and I had poor self-esteem. Um, but I think what changed for me was I worked a customer service job
mm,
at KFC, and my manager, I actually failed the initial test
oh,
to to work at KFC, but he was like, you know what, like I'm sure you'll be great. So he just like told me what the right answers were,
wow,
and um, I learned how to talk with people in that job. He's like, just smile, just say hello. And then I got really good at talking with people in that job. So a customer service job taught me how to be confident in my speaking skills and confident speaking with people and just building relationships. And that's kind of mind blowing for me to say that KFC job has such a big impact on me, but it really did.
yeah,
And now I'm not scared to talk with people.
that's amazing.
And
Yeah.
that was the major change
Yeah,
for me.
props to KFC for that. But so if folks are in kind of a similar situation, because there's so many out there, myself included, that started as kind of that shy, introverted kid that didn't want to say as much.
Mhm.
And I have my own story of how I got out of my shell. But for yourself, like, okay, talk us through kind of the first couple of days. So your manager just let you in. Okay, here's the right answers. You're starting like day one. You'll be fine, right?
Mhm.
What's running through your head, and like how do you get through it? Because the first day must have been horrible, or maybe it wasn't. I don't know if you can even
Um,
remember like
the
what that
first
experience was like.
I don't really remember the first day as a cashier. So I would work like front and back.
Okay.
But the first day as a cashier, I would remember I didn't know how to smile.
Okay.
I didn't know how to smile. And then my manager would always tell me, Angela, remember to smile. Angela, just smile. And then he would tell me, just say hello there to every single person that walked through the door. So I would just force a smile and then say hello there to every single person. And now I still do that. Like if you just say hello, it just sounds a little bit awkward to me. So hello there
Gotcha.
sounds awesome to me, and I do it all the time still. And that forcing a smile, at first it feels awkward and forced because it is, but then it becomes natural. So like for me, I think for everyone they should just it's it's very cliche, but fake it till you make it, right?
Right.
I faked a smile till it became natural to me, and then I just smiled every time. I smile every time I see a person now,
Yeah.
and it's very natural for me now. So, but yeah, it did start off very, very awkward though. I didn't know how to smile. I couldn't smile.
No, I think that's good advice. And what I tell a lot of folks is that whatever you're doing, whether you like it or not, you're building a habit, right? So you're building a habit to smile, or you're building a habit not to smile, right? With I often tell people I have a RBF, which is like a resting bitch face.
Oh yeah, I have that.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to sit there, and if I'm not really paying attention, like I'll look upset and angry at people, and then sometimes you'll see me go, and because I remember, like, okay, I should probably be a little bit more upbeat. And then to your point about that faking till you make it, if you smile, if you feel a little bit more happy or whatever, or you at least have the facial expression, then the feelings tend to adopt itself and come naturally to that side too. So.
Yeah, I definitely had that. I actually had one of my coworkers from KSE say to me that she didn't really like me at the beginning because I looked so mean. Definitely had that RBF.
Right. So I encourage folks. So part of the guidance here is to just practice smiling, be it by yourself, be it with other people, fake it till you make it, whether it feels natural or not. Then it'll start feeling more natural, and then it'll probably change things. Um, so it sounded like your journey is a little bit by kind of fluke and accident, in the sense that if your mom's whatever friend's daughter was in an SLP, then there could have been a whole bunch of other things. Were there other areas that you were exploring along the way, like before you even found that? What was kind of the area that you wanted to get into versus what were the areas that mom and dad wanted you to get into, or did you
Um,
even have a sense?
that was actually like I well, I was in grade 12 when my mom suggested that to me.
Okay.
And before that, I don't know if many people know what they want to do before like grade 12, but some people
Maybe.
do. And I was one of those people that didn't really have a sense. Like I said, I had low self-esteem,
Mhm.
so I thought that I couldn't do anything. I had my hobbies, of course. I enjoyed art. But I don't but again, I didn't think that I would ever be good enough to become an artist or anything art related. But I did think about these things like, oh, maybe I can be like a web designer or graphic designer, something like that. But these ideas I never entertained seriously. Um, so yeah, there wasn't really much. I just felt like I was pretty lost. So that's why I needed my mom's guidance. And yeah, good thing for parents.
Yeah. So did you seek out her guidance and actually said, "Hey, I have to start filling in my application forms at some point, and I need some help doing that," or is it more like parents tend to provide advice whether you want it or not?
Exactly.
And,
That's what I was gonna say.
okay, so it really came from her. It wasn't really you. You would have just kind of done whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if my parents didn't say anything, then I probably would have asked. But with many parents, you really don't have to ask to get to that point.
Sounds good. So we chalk up, I guess, KFC for you being able to communicate a little better, and did that also influence your self-esteem? I know a lot of folks struggle with that too, where it's different, right? Being able to communicate, being able to smile, being able to talk, and self-esteem sometimes they're very related, but sometimes it's different. So did that also lift up your self-esteem? And are there other things that along the way that you felt that you could do?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the start of my self-esteem improving was at KFC in grade 12.
Sure.
And then over the course of my undergrad and my master's, I it was just kind of like uphill from there.
Mhm.
I felt like being around other people made me really recognize my strengths. I think when I was alone, being an introvert and not feeling comfortable building relationships with people, I I couldn't really tell like how I was doing compared to other people, and like I recognize that other people have strengths that I don't, but at the same time that I have strengths that they don't.
Mhm.
So during university and during my master's, I also felt like I was learning a lot. So because I recognized that I was learning a lot, because university was like it's challenging for everybody, right? It's supposed to be a challenge so they can push you to improve. I felt like I was learning a lot and improving in a lot of different areas, and that really improved my self-esteem because I knew I was improving. So, but of course I still like struggle with it a little bit. Like imposter syndrome, that is definitely a very real thing, and it
Right.
it comes and it goes, but yeah, but
Yeah.
I've
I
gotten
think
much
that's a
better.
pretty common thing for folks to experience. But yeah, it sounds like that during that kind of undergrad to master's trajectory, you felt that growth. So that kind of snowballed and self-reinforced itself. And well, I guess if you always thought that you would go into SLP, then the master's would have been an automatic thing. Like, do you have to take a master's to get your SLP? Or okay,
Yeah, you have
that's
to
one.
take a master's to get into SLP. And so since grade 12, once I knew I wanted to get into SLP, well, I took the first year like prerequisites, and then I knew just to make sure, right, that
Sure,
I was
yeah.
interested in the subject matter. Um, then I knew for sure I was going into SLP. So actually the undergrad and then the master's was basically automatic. Okay, I have to do this anyway. I'm just gonna go do it, right?
Right.
And that wasn't a problem for me. What became a problem was afterwards. But I don't know if you want me to talk about that right now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So because like school life has been so structured for me, it's just you know what you have to do, you just go do it, right?
Right.
But once you go into the adult world, you're not in school anymore, then you can make a path for yourself. And I've never had to make a path for myself.
Okay.
I went to high school. My mom told me what to do for my job. I did my schooling to go to do that job, and then I got my first job. And then what? Like, do I stick with this job forever,
Mhm.
or do I make my own path? And this is one thing I wish I knew earlier, actually, that I am capable of making my own path. And even for speech language pathologists, where the regular thing is to either work in schools with children or work in hospitals with like stroke patient or brain injury patients, then like that's all you can do. But there's a lot more that you can do, and that's why I started Speak Fluent, because I realized that with the help of other people, of course, Michael included, I can make my own path. And there is a lot of stuff that you can do and a lot of interesting things you can do, and you can build a lot of relationships with people and figure out what the world needs. I think that's very interesting to be able to build your own path like that.
Cool. Yeah, if you're open to it, I'd love to dive into a little bit more about that decision-making process. So you finish your master's, right?
Mhm.
And then you had a job waiting for you, or you
Not waiting
got
for
that?
me,
Okay.
because I took like a 1 month trip to Europe to
Okay.
just kind of
Nice.
travel a little bit. My first time outside of Taiwan, my origin of birth, and North America. That's my
Okay.
first time anywhere else. Took a 1 month trip with some of my classmates and friends and just kind of explored. So I didn't have a job waiting for me.
Okay.
I did look, but then it was just kind of a weird time. I would have to be doing interviews during my travels and
Right.
or like while I was in Alberta, which I wasn't going to stay there anyway.
Right.
Um, so I didn't have a job waiting for me, but I got one just a couple months after I moved to Toronto,
Okay.
and it was the school job that I'm still staying with currently, actually.
Okay.
So this job is basically you're a contractor working in the schools, working with kids with speech sound disorders, stuttering, and voice disorders. So it's a very specific subset of what SLPs can work with.
Mhm.
But it's just the way the school system is structured here. And I like the job, but it is very specific, I guess, and there isn't that much you can do with it.
Okay.
It's just you're given this job, you work with kids, you see them like once every week or two, and that's it. Like that's all you can do. You can't explore um, other disorders, I guess.
Right.
SLPs can work with a lot of things, like I mentioned, but
Yeah.
with this job, you can only work with these three things. And like, I don't want to work with kids for the rest of my life. I love kids. They're fun to work with sometimes, but I also really like the motivation that adults have. So I wanted to seek out that opportunity. I actually had another part-time job at the same time, where I worked at a private clinic,
Okay.
and that one I hoped to get some experience working with adults. like with accent modification. But there wasn't a lot of opportunity because I think a lot of people don't know about this. And so like for most SLPs, they don't have like a lot of opportunity to work with adults.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So walk us through a little bit about like kind of the decision-making process. So you have the job, you have two jobs, like a couple of jobs that you're kind of doing together, and you have to say, well, I want to do something more. And then is that how like Speak Fluent came about, or like what was the conversation in order to do that? I think I'll just start my own company. Is that just as easy as that?
Well, I must say truthfully, Michael is the entrepreneur of our relationship.
Fair enough.
So he likes starting up companies. So he has a lot of startups that he worked on over the past few years, and he hears a lot about my work and what I do and what SLPs can do. So he started working on this idea like a few years ago and just kind of thinking about like building that niche, I guess. What do people need and what do people not know about? So it's going to be kind of some work on our part trying to make sure that people know that this service exists, which is why we built this company, right?
Mhm.
Because we know that a lot of people don't know that this service exists, even for children, right?
Right.
If you've never heard of an SLP before, then you would not know that SLPs exist. It's a growing profession, I would say. There are more programs being made available in Canada, and there are more people going into it. But I would say if you're not a teacher or like not someone or not on a healthcare like professional team, then you wouldn't know that SLPs exist.
Sure.
So we wanted to make sure that people know that this service exists for both children and for adults, but more specifically adults, because adults especially immigrants, they don't know that this service exists and is available to them. So Michael was the one that pushed to start this company. Um, I definitely am the kind of person that needs that kind of push. Like I said, like my self-esteem is not great. And when you go through schooling to be an SLP, they don't teach you about starting your own private practice.
Of course not. Yeah.
They teach you to be like
An
just a
employee.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Go work in a hospital, go work
Yeah.
in a school. How's it? You need to do a lot of your own research into starting your own company as an SLP. And so like I was in these Facebook groups to start your own company for a while, and I would keep reading and reading like when can I start? Like how do I start? And I just like I guess those kind of comments influenced me slowly to start accepting Michael's idea and think like okay, maybe I can do it. Like maybe like I'm just a few years out of my master's, but a lot of people do start their private practices earlier on because you can learn as you grow, I guess, and grow as you learn.
Sure.
So yeah, so those kind of the Facebook groups and Michael pushing me was a major part of it, and me feeling like I really knew what I was doing because I've had these interests for a while and I did do this kind of work a little bit on the side. But doing it full time was something that I was a little bit scared of. But then as I worked with more and more people who really liked my service, I just felt more and more confident to start this kind of thing.
That's great. So it sounds like that a lot of the self-esteem is first of all starting with believing in yourself or having someone believe in you first,
Yeah.
and then as you grow and you get better and you say, you know what, I reflect back and I've grown, I've got better, I'm now much more capable than I was before, and that helps kind of reinforce that self-esteem. So that's great guidance and advice. What are some other pieces of SWIKE that you might give to young Angela or the young Angelas out there who might be considering SLP? So now that they know of it, what are some things that they might kind of take away to say, hey, how could they explore? What should they do? Are there areas that they should look at first? Or what are some other just general SWIKE for yourself that growing up as that, I don't know, shy, low self-esteem kid, if you could slip yourself a note or something like that, or have a 2-minute recording or a conversation with yourself, what would you tell yourself?
I think for the self-esteem thing, I think there's no way just a few words from somebody could improve my self-esteem. I
Okay.
think I would just have to go through the process that I did in order to build up my self-esteem in a more like organic way. I would
Okay.
say.
But there wasn't
Um,
something that you could help trigger it sooner or faster, like just some guidance say, hey, you should, well, maybe have started at KFC younger or something, or I'm just curious. I'm not sure if there's an answer for that, but just curious.
well, I remember this one event really clearly that made me feel like I could never be good enough to do anything
Okay.
was in, I think, elementary school or high school. I think high school. They brought in a performer,
Okay.
a pianist, to play the piano for us. That child was like, I don't know, 5 years old or something. He was very young and he played so well. And that was when I was like, I haven't even, I don't know anything about music. I'll never be able to get to that point, even though I kind of wanted to learn how to play piano. But I probably should have had someone tell me, like, it's never too late to start. And then I probably would have liked some kind of role model that started something late, but still achieved like something great with their skill. So,
Well,
but that child performer really hurt my self-esteem.
the funny thing that comes to mind is that Harlan Sanders, who's the founder of KFC, actually
Mhm.
started his business when he was like 60 something. Right?
Oh,
So KFC wasn't started until he was kind of in his later years. So maybe that's part of the inspiration if you dug into the history of it.
I should
Um,
have.
Started much later, and a lot of people thought he was going to be a failure and stuff. He was living out of his car and stuff like that. But now, like, well, your self-esteem is owed a little bit to, in part, to KFC, or at least that great manager. So maybe it's not so much the brand, but it's those people that are willing to take a chance and say, you know what, I see something in you, and I know you can do it. So maybe it's worthwhile finding that previous manager and then saying thanks to whatever he saw and giving you that start. So I think that's great. So never too late to start is what I'm hearing. And any other kind of words of wisdom for younger Angela?
One thing that I wish I did before I got into SLP, and I have had a few students reach out to me to do this, is I wish I could have gone to existing SLPs, a variety of SLPs, to
Okay.
ask them about their work and what they love and what they hate, what they dislike, what they wish they could change when they thought it was hard. I didn't do any of that. I just kind of shadowed some SLPs, but I never asked them questions.
Right.
I just saw them do the work, was kind of like participated in some of the work a little bit to see what it was like, but I never asked them questions about the other stuff that I don't see, the stuff that I'm dealing with right now, right?
Sure.
What's it like building your own private practice? What is it? What is the work that you find really hard? Like, is it hard building relationships with other professionals because they don't see your work as that valuable? I think advocacy is still kind of an ongoing effort with the speech language pathology field, and I think that I wish I knew just to prepare myself, for what I would have to deal with. So I
Yeah.
think for any student out there or anyone looking to switch careers, to ask questions for people who are already in that field, because I think you'll gain a lot of valuable insight into those things that you don't see.
Yeah. And I totally echo that because I'm always amazed for someone who wants to become whatever, an SLP, a doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer. And then when you ask, well, have you ever talked to an accountant? Like, what? What do you mean? Am I supposed to? Well, it's probably a good idea that whatever you decide to get into, you probably have met a couple. And I think those are great questions to ask. Like, what do you love about your job? What's hard? How did you overcome it? Those challenges, is if they can help accelerate your career path or help you at least know what you're up against and maybe a few tips or tricks on how to get through it. And I think that would be useful guidance. Are
Yeah.
there other things that you would share with the younger self?
Um, that's those two are the major things that I can think of. Um, But I think another one might be just to reflect a lot. Now,
Okay.
I only got into SLP once I started reflecting more of my experiences. So I think when someone chooses their career, I think they should reflect a lot on what matters to them. And actually, there's this great book that I read. What was it called? Something about the 7 habits of really effective people.
Highly effective people. Yeah.
Highly effective people.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good one. And self-reflection was a major part of that book. And that's something that I felt like I didn't do a lot when I was younger. But that would have helped me a lot in getting to where I am now. The stuff about the self-esteem, stuff about starting your private practice. Does this make sense for me? Do I really want to do this? Things like that. So I know it sounds very general, but reflecting on like what values to them and where they want to be and what kind of, I guess, work-life balance they want.
So that reflection for you was like a little notebook, a little journal that you did on like a regular basis, or was this like a one-time thing? So if we could make it like practical, tactile for someone to do this weekend or something, like is there? So you had a bunch of questions. Did it come kind of in inspiration in one weekend, or is it like no, it took me weeks, months, years, and I'm still going through it, or where else?
Definitely took me years, and I'm still going through it a little bit for sure. I think that it de- I think for depending on kind of where you're at, it would be helpful to have some kind of notebook to have it written down.
Sure.
Actually, in that book, it recommends for me to write this kind of stuff down, like, write down like what are your values, your core
Yep.
values. And I never really did, but I would constantly think about it. Maybe if I wrote it down, I'd be more efficient in this process. But yeah, I would recommend trying out a few different ways, talking with people, reflect and talk with people about what your core values are, get them to tell you what they think about you, like what kind of person am I? Just kind of ask them, and then maybe you'll get a better sense of what kind of person you are. Write down like, okay, what really matters to me? What are things that I could change, but what is one thing that I cannot change? And I would recommend writing this down because then you have it like kind of more concretely. Something that I never did, and it feels weird to recommend something that I never did, but I feel like it would have helped me.
Sure. It sounds like the university saying, hey, after I hang up here, then we should probably get a piece of paper and do that, right?
Yeah, maybe. I've been told that a lot. Just
Yeah.
write it down.
And yeah, definitely echo the reflection part. I think one recommendation that I have for folks is, even if you're young, is to start thinking about what would be on your retirement memo. Right? And a lot of people are like, what? I'm like 18, I'm 22, and stuff like that. I don't even know what I'm going to do next year, let alone when I'm 65. But if you allow yourself to imagine a little bit, to dream, to say, okay, what would an ideal career, an ideal life, an ideal job look like to you? And if the answer is, I have no idea, well, that's where you go and talk to someone who is in a job that you want and have some conversation. What it's like, what do you want to do? And then hopefully that points you to two more people and points you to another person and then four more people and so on. And then you realize whether it is for you, or you realize, whoa, that doesn't sound like what I wanted to do at all. It's probably good to do that before you spend 4 years, 8 years, or however many years in school to get all that. So I think
Yeah, I've been engaging in those kind of exercises, asking myself, okay, what do I want to do if I had a lot of money? What would I want to do with my life, right? Because then it'll show you kind of what matters to you. Do you just want to like stay at home and just play video games all day? Is that what I want to do? Probably not. And so I do like talk about these things with my partner, Michael, as well. And I talk about these with my friends as much as I can to get their perspective. And then if I hear their answers, I can think to myself, oh, is that something I would want to do? So getting a lot of different opinions. I love hearing different people's perspectives on things. And I think it helps shape my own reflection as well.
cool. We're actually having a session tonight called the Purpose Confidence Club, which people just kind of reflect and share, bounce off ideas of what they feel their purpose is, and ask like what do people think. So
Well, that's
maybe in
awesome.
a future session you'll join us and think about that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Let me know.
So what does the future hold for you? So Speak Fluent is growing, and if someone out there is kind of thinking about, well, that sounds interesting, but I don't know if that's for me. Like what would they have to look at? Like if you're a person who is like this, reach out. If you're a person who is like this, reach out. Like what are some things that they can kind of reflect on themselves to say, okay, yeah, I definitely should reach out to an SLP.
I think a company's mission statement, as kind of, it feels kind of cheesy, but a company's mission statement is, I think, would help people get to know like the company or like the field and see if that's something that they want to do.
Okay.
So one statement that really resonates with a lot of my clients is that, do you want people to pay attention to what you're saying, not how you're saying it? And I talk about, like, I'll talk about my clients as well, how they're super motivated and they're really, they never knew this service existed. Like, I would probably ask someone who wants to get into SLP is, do you want to make this difference for people? Do you want people to be able to communicate effectively and clearly, to be able to engage in all aspects of their life successfully, whether that's social relationships or in their career? Do you want to make that difference for people? So I I think that being able to ask these kind of questions should help someone who's looking into getting into this field. And I try to make this as clear as possible on our website as well, like
Mhm.
having our like that kind of statement for both our clients and for future SLPs. So when SLPs apply or they want to talk to someone, they can, like, it's part of the interview process, right? It's like, what kind of work do you do? Like, what 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 do you do? So I think that that statement is just helpful for people.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what I heard from that is if you are looking to get ahead in your career and you feel that how you say it or your impression of how you say it is restricting you a little bit more so that people can't focus on what you say. And oftentimes that's a bit on that confidence, that self-esteem, where other people might think you're fine, but it's in your head. You definitely want to improve that. Then an SLP could be something that you consider.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, sometimes my clients come to me because of that as well. They're not sure if it's in their head or not, and they have this feeling that their speech is a bit different, but they don't know what. So I help them figure out what it is that is different. So oftentimes when someone comes from a different country, they speak a different language, right, as their first language. And their first language has a whole like sound system and word structure that is completely different from English.
Right.
And those rules are kind of applied to how they speak English, but they don't know like what exactly they're doing. So even by me telling them, okay, this is what's happening with your speech, then they're able to be aware and then they can be confident knowing like, oh, I make this difference, but that's okay. Or I make this difference and it changes the whole meaning of the word. So I need to change
Right.
that. But now I know how to change it. So it definitely improves their confidence in that way. And what the service does is it helps them be aware of all of these things and it helps them be able to make these differences so they can be confident for the rest of their life. Once you learn something, it's not going to go away, right?
Sure.
And once you break a habit of saying something a certain way and you start saying it another way, that's also forever. So really, like, this service is for someone who's looking to change their speech for the better forever. And I think that's pretty valuable.
Sounds good. So yeah, definitely check out Angela and Speak Fluent. So where can folks connect with you, or where should they reach out? We'll put kind of links in the show notes for folks to connect.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a website, and it's speakfluent.ca. Just the word speakfluent.ca. And you can also email us at info@speakfluent.ca. But the website's the best way to reach us because you can also book a free consultation to speak with us, figure out if the service is right for you, and talk about your needs and your goals.
Cool. And what are the aspirations for the future? So it's growing Speak Fluent. Are there other things, other projects? Are you gonna pick up the piano now that you know it's not too late?
I'm still scared. Well, it requires a lot of practice. I know that. Now, the reason for me not picking up piano now is like a whole different reason. I just don't have enough time in the day for that anymore.
Sure.
Um, and but I definitely will think about going to that thing that you mentioned for what was it?
Purpose
The club.
Confidence Club. Yeah.
Yes, that one. I'll think about that one. Aspirations for the future, though. We want to grow Speak Fluent, so it's big and this service is accessible to people like all over Canada at least.
Mhm.
We're thinking about bringing workshops to businesses because we want businesses to feel confident, knowing that they have the best people. But sometimes the best people come from different parts of the world or they have different accents and they have different speaking ability, but their knowledge and their skill in other areas might be something that they're looking for, but their communication skills aren't quite where they want it to be. So we want to eventually bring maybe like workshops, work with businesses, bigger companies to bring that service there. We might also want to work on this tech aspect actually. So Michael's a very techie guy, and I love tech. I think that technology can improve our like all kinds of processes, and even for speech as well. If we can get some kind of like automatic speech analyzer for like some metrics, like if you say ums and uhs a lot during your presentations, maybe that's something that we would want to measure and see if training can reduce that. And if you pause a lot during your presentations, then maybe we can measure that too. I don't know. That's just the beginning stages, but that's something that we might want to look into later on.
Yeah, I think that would be definitely something that's in the realm of possibility, and yeah, looking forward to all those. So thanks, Angela, for sharing all the wisdom and insights and your experience, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. Take care. Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.